All right, welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday, week 16. Today I'm going to get a little bit more back into the more structured thinking in and behind the footy club, particularly as it relates to the people who'll be watching this video, which is our what we'd literally described as a customer. And the customer is obviously a word which I don't think footy people feel entirely comfortable about, given the emotional relationship that people actually have with the club. But by way of a definition which relates to strategy, it's something which is clearly well understood. The customer is obviously critical for all the reasons that any business, anyone building a business is fundamental. Everyone will say that there's no more important person, and quite clearly there is no more important person. And when I talk about strategy and some of the things that we've had to do in regard to creating and ensuring there are trade-offs that between where we spend our money and how we allocate our funding. Key component of actually how we allocate our funding is the amount of funding that we actually have in the first place, and almost to every piece of revenue that we generate can be, whether directly or indirectly, sourced back to one particular thing, and that's the number of people who support our club in the first place. And as I've mentioned in previous Whiteboard Wednesdays, probably sits at the heart of the Melbourne Football Club's strategic challenge, in that we do have a relatively small or comparatively small supporter base, and I've seen lots of numbers over the years, but we're probably, us and North Melbourne at this stage are seen as having the lowest numbers of supporters. And if being a supporter is then a prerequisite to becoming a member, which we assume that it is, well, therein lies one of the great challenges. But another aspect of that is then trying to really work through and understand, in fact, the makeup of your supporter base, and we think therefore that is our great opportunity. As a little a concept and a continuum, we basically, our customer base really forms from one of two areas, and that's, if we started at this end, if we want to bring a little chart in play here, or a little line in here, we could almost put at this end, at the most extreme end, those who have a very strong emotional attachment to our club, and in many ways these people have been considered to be the irrational supporters, those who make decisions to become customers for the reasons of their very strong emotional attachment, and often will do so without an enormous amount of rationality, and don't think that just about every marketing campaign that is out there relies on some sort of notion of irrationality, and we always say, even of people who sell or create perfume or makeup, they're basically hope salesmen. They're fundamentally out there selling hope, and hope is obviously an emotion which just about every major campaign you can look at looks at trying to tap into some sort of expectation of people may have of themselves, or some hope or some aspirational component of it. At the other end of the scale, we have people who have a very rational view of their relationship with the football club, and they're people who are looking at it specifically as it relates to their organisation's strategy. And the key element within all this thing, the thing which actually ties it together, I think, is respect and understanding in regard to that. And part of it here is that whilst we might say there is a certain amounts of irrational, and therefore we'll see some irrational behaviours from time to time, we must be very respectful of this element, because in the end the heart of our football club is established from within this group. And again, it comes back to that notion of heritage, and the heritage which sits inside every single one of our supporters, which is the core reason why our organisation exists. And what we try to do through all of our supporter development programs is look at means by which we can actually get inside the next generation of supporters, and whilst recognising that the majority of that is generational type support, which is passed down from mother to daughter, father to son, through family associations with the football club. More than ever before, young kids are making their own mind as to who they actually support, particularly as it relates to heroes, the influence of obviously the many media. Every game's on the television, they get to see great players. I think Buddy Franklin's goal in the MCG a few weeks ago probably created maybe another 100 Hawthorn supporters out of one particular incident. So that sort of aspect of it is very, very important. And then at the other end of the scale, we say, okay, well, what are these guys actually looking for here? Well, they're obviously looking at a very structured way of which they can actually get a return on investment. So therefore, the respect we need to have for these guys is actually understanding, in fact, what their strategy is. And what you're trying to do is really establish, strategic alignment, and that comes in really, in a general sense, with sponsorship in sort of two areas that we focus on. The first one is just purely the brand awareness aspect of what comes from a logo on a jumper, or the naming of a community program, or all those sorts of things, which are just purely about awareness. But obviously, sponsorship goes way deeper than that, because if it was just about awareness, they'd whack a billboard on Punt Road or Tullamarine Freeway or something similar. So the important part, and what comes from this sort of relationship as it relates to an involvement with the footy club, is this thing of associations. And so once we get past the awareness, which should happen in relatively quick time with an AFL club, given the amount of coverage we get media-wise, it's all therefore about what associations that brings. And associations are really that's where the risk is in it for sponsors, because obviously there is the potential of negative associations if we have issues in and around our club, or we have any sort of crisis. But in the main, they're very positive associations, given the good work that football clubs do, not only to directly promote their brand, but the sort of the halo effect, or that comes from all the very good community work that football clubs do over a whole period of time. But the key for us in regard to this is we employ people that we just have to understand what the strategy is of the various organisations who associate with them, and therefore provide a value in regard to that. And a good example in recent times has been, Kaspersky utilising the brand power and the strong awareness that comes from being involved with an AFL club to almost launch their brand into Australia, at the start of the 2009 season. But quite clearly, as they start, they're already number 3 in Australia, and they're number 2 in Melbourne in regard to their market positioning. And quite clearly, our objective is to take them to number 1. Once you've got to that, you're then ending up looking like almost 100% brand awareness. So therefore, it's all the associations which come through it. And the next layer of work that we're going to do is relating to our community programs, things like cyberbullying, of which they do a lot of great work in.